All right, welcome to another edition of Ladies and Lunch virtual networking event, and I am your host, Cha Jones. This week we come to, well, every week we come together to connect positive women from various backgrounds to share their expertise and their experience and lend to a conversation that will support, help, and heal other women. So this is no exception. This week we have a fabulous panel. However, as we all know, there has been some very tragic things happening in the world, not only here in the US, but in the world. And if you haven't checked into the world, last week we experienced, actually a little bit over a week, we experienced some senseless death for us in the African American or people of color, have experienced some senseless death here in the States with the killing of Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis. And so we want to have a broader conversation about how that not only affects us here in America, but how it affects the world and what our sisters are going through outside of this country. So I am super excited to lend this conversation, get this conversation started, not only on Facebook, but also in the broader context of a couple different groups that I have that are dispersed throughout the world. So I want to introduce, and then I'm going to hand the conversation over to you ladies to introduce yourselves, because I can't do it like you do it. So I'll just tell everybody where you are, and then I'll ask that you kind of expound on that. So I have Dash Harris, who is in Panama City. I have Heather Allen, who is in Abu Dhabi. I have Michelle, I'm gonna mess this up, Michelle, okay, who is in Saudi Arabia right now. So Heather, tell us a little bit about yourself, and you don't need to tell us why you actually move. I'll ask that later, but then introduce yourselves and we'll go around the square.
Okay. Well, my name is Heather Allen. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, 47 years old, been living abroad since 2011. I teach English. I did teach on the collegiate level, and now I teach oil and gas employees here in Abu Dhabi. So that's just a little bit about me.
Thank you. Dash?
Yeah. Hi, I'm really excited to be on this panel with all these great women. I'm in Panama City. I am the co-founder of Afro Latino Travel, a travel company that focuses on African history. In Latin America, we give tours and itineraries. And I'm also a multimedia producer and doula, once again, based in Panama City, Panama. Because there's one in Florida, but I'm not there.
Right.
And Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Mashiri. I'm an English teacher by profession, but I'm also an expert transitional coach. I help people plan their expat life from researching until they move. And I have been an expat for the last 27 years, since I was 20 when I went away to college. And I think I'm going to be an expat until I retire.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you all for joining me here to have this greater conversation. I am trying to get us, it had me start a watch party, and then the watch party went away. So give me 1 second as I try to maneuver. So the way we're going to do this is kind of be a conversation. I'll ask a couple questions, and then we have some ladies who have joined us who are also live. And then we have some ladies who are on Facebook.
She had a minor in Spanish. She was a really phenomenal chick. And so following in my mother's footsteps, I went abroad and fell in love with it. The reason I left, the reason I desired to leave was that terrible economic downturn. I was in professional development and training, and those seem to be the departments that a lot of corporations dissolved when the economic downturn hit. So I ended up becoming just another rep in my office in finance. And I was dealing with healthcare, finance, insurance, and things. And so it just, I didn't see any type of growth in the field, and I want to make some real money. So I left. I left, and really, honestly, haven't looked back except to visit. I love this expat life. And so I got bit by the bug, and I have been bopping around on the planet ever since. Started out in South Korea for 4 years, was in Oman for 4 years, and I just completed my first year, full year here in the UAE and Abu Dhabi.
Thank you, Heather. Michelle, can you tell us about your experience?
As I said before, I went to university when I was 20. I studied in the Kingdom of Lesotho. I was there for 4 years, and then I moved to the States. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and then I was in the States for 14 years, and I left in 2011. Spent 1 year in Sudan, and I've been in Saudi Arabia for the last, this is my 8th year, and I have been, no, I actually, when I was 13, starting high school, I made a pact with my best friend that we were going to study outside Zimbabwe. And that's basically was like, I'm 13. I didn't know anything, plan anything. I just knew I wanted to go, where. And that's just been my drive. But, and that's one of the reasons I became an expat coach, because I've made so many stupid mistakes along the way. So it's like, hey, learn from what I learned, don't do what I did, plan it, and make sure you plan, make sure you know where you want to go, and then you're not just, oh, I'm going to go here, and then you have things happen and you have some experiences. But I've been in Saudi since 2012, and it's been an amazing experience. My students have been amazing. I've been to Riyadh. I actually, one of the most exciting experiences, because I'm a K-pop fan, I got to see the world's biggest K-pop band, BTS, in Riyadh. And so that was like, I just remember I was there. I was like, I cannot believe I'm here. And then you turn and you see this, that and it was like, we were just all fans, just having fun. And people was like, why are you going to K-pop? I was like, it's on my bucket list. So K-pop bands, check. I've traveled. I've been to Korea. I've been to Tokyo. I've been to Dubai. I've been around Saudi Arabia. I've been Jeddah. So I get to travel. I get to live the life that maybe I didn't really think about carefully as a child, but now as an more mature adult, I'm now starting to plan more carefully as to where I want to move on to next, and hopefully plan my retirement as an expat.
Thank you. Dash. I'm looking at your last name, Dash.
I actually moved to Panama City. This is my second time moving, actually, or rather living as an adult here. My family is Panamanian, both my mother and father. My biological father never left. He's always lived here. And my mother's entire family still lives here. Like, she was the only one to immigrate to the States, which she was pregnant with me when she immigrated. So I was like, an anchor baby or whatever. But I moved, this was about 7 years ago, and I was living here for 2 years, and then I started my company. Basically, Afro-Latino Travel needed a base in Latin America, and I'm from New York. And so I knew I had to physically be in Latin America, and Panama was the place. It was an easy decision because I already had a base here. It's also a hub for South America, Central America, the Caribbean, and North America. And so that transition was relatively easy. However, it's not the same experience as a Panamanian who grew up in Panama their entire life. I did come to Panama every year for summers, but again, I do recognize that I'm privileged. I'm living in an area in Panama City that most Panamanians can't afford to live in. And so I have a very unique perspective in that I understand the dynamics of the various classes of the local population, and then also my experience still even as a foreigner in Panama. And so we started doing the tours, the Afro Panamanian tours in Panama, and we've expanded to Cuba. We have tours in Peru, Colombia, Puerto Rico, and hopefully we can add more next year. We don't know what's to come, but that's the plan. But we are also adding virtual tours. So at least with that, you can get the experience and the history. And I'm also a multimedia journalist. I write, I blog, I vlog, create videos, and I'm also part of a podcast called Riots, and it's with two other Black Central American women. And that's particularly important to state because we have particular experiences. And specifically with region, because we're in Central America, or we're Central Americans, or in my case, I am physically in Central America. But I left the States because I was depressed for 2 years, like depressed. New York is it's a pretty lonely place. Like, it's a lot of people, it's a lot of activity, the city that never sleeps, but it's extremely lonely and everyone's extremely busy all the time. And it's kind of hard to connect with people, even though, I lived in Harlem at that time and my best friend lived in the Bronx, like literally like right over the bridge. But she was busy with work and school, and, I was busy with work and other projects. And so it was like, it's really hard to connect. And so I realized that I was depressed. I realized that I needed to make a change. And it wasn't just, meditating. That could have been it, maybe. But I needed to get out of that environment. And then, as I mentioned, I wanted to start my company, my business. So, I wasn't that invested in the States by that point. It wasn't great for my well-being. So I left.
Okay. Well, thank you all for sharing your experiences and what has taken you abroad. I lived in South Korea for 3.5 years. And at that time, when I moved abroad, it was really at that brink of, it was like 2008, 2009. And we were going down in the economic downswing of all that was going on in like 07, 08, 09. And so at that point, there was so much that was happening in the US that I was kind of glad to be abroad. So for me, my life was so much better. It was richer. And I tell people that all the time because, for some reason, even with all this going on right now, people still think that America is like the greatest country in the world and that it's flawless and that you as a person can be treated better. And that's just, in my experience, is not true. I think that America has its greatness, although there are some very systematic issues with being in America, especially as a person of color. And so I know that we all have very different experiences and live in different regions and some more countries. So tell me, like, when you turn on the news, go on Facebook, social media, and you see what's happening in America, how does that play on your experience living abroad? I'll start with Harris.
Well,
Dash. God, I don't know why I keep calling you Harris, but Dash.
That's funny because my mom, like growing up in Panama, they used to call her Harris because, like she used to play volleyball. So they call everyone by their last name. So that's fine. So I feel like the feeling that I have living here right now, I wake up with my stomach in knots. Like, I feel I'm like super unproductive. I've been super unproductive, the past few weeks. obviously the social distancing / quarantine, because we were under strict orders. They kind of are relaxing it. Panama has been relaxing it, or that started on Monday, that they started relaxing the restrictions. And then on top of the protests and on top of the extrajudicial killings that have been taking place for generations at this point, the targeted violence, you know, toward Black men, but also Black women and girls and our trans brothers and sisters, Breonna Taylor and all of that. It's unnerving, because the thing is that in Panama, just like any other nation in Latin America, they will continuously say that there's no racism, that our Blacks are happy, everyone is mixed, so how can we be racist? All of that is a lie, because not everyone is mixed. That's number one. And even if you are, that doesn't prevent a white social hierarchy, you know, since when has being mixed ever stopped white supremacy, you know? And so I've been talking about this a lot with my friends in the US, Panamanian friends in the US, people here. And I'm like itching to like do our own silent, peaceful protests, because even though I live, like I said, I live in a kind of uppity area. I live in the hotel district. And that was intentional, because in Panama, the infrastructure is kind of shaky. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be. We have the canal, it generates billions of dollars. You know, we have the largest duty-free zone, the second largest in the world. The biggest one is in Hong Kong. And so we have so much money flowing through here that nobody should be living in poverty. That's my own personal view on it. Yet the infrastructure is shaky. And so I purposely moved to the hotel zone because I knew that I would not have to experience blackouts. I knew that they wouldn't turn our water off, because everyone in my building is white, whether they're white Panamanian, white Colombian, or white from the US. You know, and it wasn't even a thing of, oh no, I want to be away from my people. It's not that, it's really just convenience. And I know that if any problems or if anything went awry in this building, it would be fixed immediately. And so the experience is interesting, because I am still a Black person here. I'm still a Black body. And I say Black body because we're generally not seen as people, you know? I've had experiences here that are pretty similar in the US, and experiences here that probably would never happen in the US, because white people kind of have a little bit of fear, because they know that we have recourse in the States, whereas Black people here, we have the Afro movements, the Afro-Panamanian movements, and people do get punished, but I don't think as swiftly or as hard as in the US. That's my personal opinion. And so I've had instances where I went into a copy center just to make copies, you know, 2 seconds, right? But nothing is ever 2 seconds in Latin America. Customer service is like, you know, and I get that. You know, they don't care about you. Like, they're not getting paid enough. And I get it. You know, I don't raise a fuss. Like,
that's everywhere in the world.
You know, customer service is non-existent. I understand if I'm getting paid pennies, you know. Right. But exactly. There is a level of courtesy I expect, such as me walking into a place of business and being acknowledged, at least, because we do that in Panama. People go on the buses and they say good morning, good evening to perfect strangers. That's just how it is here. And I walked into the copy place. They ignored me, but that copy place is notorious for ignoring everyone, so I didn't take it personal. And I'm sitting there and a white man comes in, literally like maybe 5-10 minutes later. It was a good while, you know, because it was a good while enough for me to notice. And they immediately asked what he would like to do, and of course I cursed everyone out and, you know, stormed off and slammed the door, because that's just how I am. You know, it's things like that. And I have the co-founder, my other co-founder of Afro Latino Travel. He's from Texas. He's Panamanian as well. And he lived here for 5-6 years. And he said it took for him to move to Panama to have guns pointed at his face in broad daylight. So the situation here is pretty similar. I mean, it's not to the level of, you know, you have this running CVS receipt list of Black people that have been, you know, extrajudiciously killed. However, they target Black people here point blank, you know, just like anywhere else. So the thing is that I have a cover privilege, most definitely, just because I'm not engaging with the police in my neighborhood. And just again, because I'm a foreigner. And people assume I'm a foreigner because I'm a Black person that looks like I have money. And it's not even as what you think. I don't go out like flashy or anything, but there is and I'm sure people on the panel know locals. You know, there's a certain way of dressing, there's a certain way of carrying yourself, there's a certain way, people have said, my husband included, he's a Black Cuban. He's like, you just walk around too proud. That's why they know that you're not.
Wow.
Like I carry myself in a way that I'm like, he often makes fun of me that I walk into a place without like asking permission. I'm like, yeah, because I don't live my life that way. And so he's like, we don't generally do that here. And I've had conversations with a lot of other Black people who may have moved to the country of their parents' birth, and they have noticed those markers that a woman that she's Ethiopian, I believe. She said her mother said, you walk like you own the street. That's why they know that that you didn't grow up here, that you're not from here. You may look like us, but you're not from here. So,
Wow.
it's really layered. It's really layered.
I think that's that American part. Who you are.
Yeah.
And I think, and I got that too when I went to Korea. Like it's just a different air, and it's not intentional, I guess. I just think that we have, even though we have things that are totally against us here in the United States, I think there still is that sense of I'm an American and like I have rights, even if those rights are not always seen, heard, or respected. But that would be a whole nother tangent. Heather, tell us, and you've lived in Korea and in Oman.
Okay, let me say this before we even go there. Let me say this, and I should have said this before, so my bad. This woman, Chai Jones, is the reason why I am an expat. Let me put that out there. Let me give credit where credit is due. I remember in 2008, we sat there. I was on the phone. We were in the kitchen, and I said, "Let's go to Japan." She was like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to go to Japan. My brother's been in Japan because I have a brother. I have my brother on my father's son, my half brother. He was in Japan for like a million years, married a Japanese chick. He's doing his thing. He might as well be Japanese." And so he was like, come to Japan. I'm like, okay, child, let's go to Japan. Because I consider Child one of my best friends. That's a sister. And so she was like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. She was like, it's ironic that you say that because I was looking at and I was like, oh, really? Okay. Then my mom got diagnosed. So Child went a year and a half before I went. And the reason why I ended up in South Korea instead of Japan was because her university was looking for professors. And I had just knocked my master's in education out the park. And I sent her all my credentials. She forwarded it to everybody at her uni. And this was in November. By the end of December, I had gotten the job. And by the end of February, I was on a plane. So I give Chai Jones full credit for infecting me with the expatitis.
I don't know how that helps.
I'm like, ask Chai, it's Chai's fault. Chai gave me the bug and I am an expat for life. So that's number one. So let me say that. Thank you.
Glad I could help.
Sister. Thank you, sister. Now, being as honest and as transparent as I possibly can. When I turn on the TV, not even the TV, when I pick up my phone, I hate my laptop. I'm on my phone now talking with you all. That's how much I hate my laptop. I remote teach and it drives me nuts. My house, the lighting in my household is not conducive for looking at a computer screen all day. So I like to use my phone. But every time I open my phone, there's a level of guilt I feel because I'm not there. Though I've lived it, I've experienced it personally in my family. And I know what it feels like to have the anxiety and the PTSD that comes with being a Black person, an African American, an Indigenous American, a melanated human being on this planet. I know what it feels like. But as God is my witness, and to be honest, I don't have that stress here in Abu Dhabi. I don't have it. I've never. The most I have been treated unfairly is when I argue maybe with a drunk white Brit at a club. Sloppy drunk bumping into me, and I'm ready to throw that heifer over a balcony. That's just me. I don't like to be touched. I don't like that. But
you said heifer, so we know it's a white woman.
Okay, but I'm just saying, they act like they have every right to put their hands on me until they see that I'm not for it. And then it's, oh, let me buy you a drink. I'm so sorry, miss. Yeah, you better be. And that's the most. I don't look in the rear view mirror. When I see the police in Abu Dhabi, I'm like, hey, Habibi, and I'm gone. I don't feel it. I don't feel it. But as soon as I step off the plane in the Continental 49, it all comes rushing back. I know what it is. I know what it could be. I know what it can be. And there's a part of me that hates that I'm not with my family and my friends in the United States, united hand in hand with them through this. But I'm also glad I'm here. And it's a very strange, it's a strange energy to have to carry. And I know this expat life isn't for everyone. I do know this, but for anybody out there that's living in a state of fear of the unknown, getting over the fear of coming to some place where they are not targeting and killing Black people is not as brave as staying where you are, knowing good and well when you walk out that door, you could be the next target. That's all that's all I know to share about this experience. I just posted, I commented on a post. I want to say it's a No Madness Travel Tribe where somebody said, what's up with the Exodus? Are we putting together a plan to get up out of the US, blase skip? And I'm like, hey, left in 2011, haven't looked back. If you really have a desire to do it, I put pieces of advice on what they needed to do. There are people that are really ready to go now. I don't even know if they're letting you get passports yet. It breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart that I'm so far away from it that I can't be with my family. But there's a sigh of relief I give because I am here and I'm not there because I know the person that I am, and I would probably be one of those people locked up. Profile. The last time I was in the United States, I got pulled over 12 o'clock at night. They said I ran a red light. The light was yellow. I know the light was yellow, but I got pulled over, Brentwood, Tennessee, shishy poo poo side of town, rich white people, whatever. It went from, ma'am, do you know why I stopped you, to me taking numerous sobriety tests, barefoot, in a club outfit, 350, I'm not that weight now, but I was almost 350 pounds then. And I was like, sweetheart, you're not testing my sobriety, you're testing my agility. I'm too fat for these tests. Just let me breathe in the hose. Oh my God. Seriously, I'm so serious.
I was up the street.
Right. I was like, you never believe what happened to me. You never believe. I mean, I literally thought, God is my witness, I literally thought, I'm gonna die tonight, because it went from one cop to three. One man to two men and a woman, flashing a light. If we search your car, and I was, Sally Davis Franklin, if you're watching this, I love you. I was driving my friend's Lexus because I was living in Oman. I was coming to visit. I don't have a car in the States. I was borrowing her car. And I was like, Lord have mercy, please don't let there be no seeds and stems in this car. But anyway, but still, I just knew, oh, I'm dead tonight. But I know a few years earlier, during the Trayvon Martin situation, And the Sandra Bland situation, I posted on Facebook, if I ever die in police custody, no, I did not commit suicide. I got everything to live for. But when they finally let me go, because they smelled cigar smoke on me because I was at a cigar bar in downtown Nashville. That's the only reason why they pulled me out of the car and made me jump through hoops. My heart was racing. I drove, I was almost to my friend's house where I was staying at the time. I pulled over and I wept because I know this situation has happened to other Black women and they did not survive it. And that's when I said, honestly, God is my witness. I'm not living in the US anymore. I can't handle that stress. I can't. Once you live away from that situation and you don't have that anxiety, it's hard to go back there. It is hard. That's for my mental health. That's for my self-help. That's my self-care, is not living in the US.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I live in the US. And
I know. Come
unfortunately.
on over, honey. Come on. Got a spare room for you.
But I remember.
Look, I might jet over there.
Come on.
Right.
Come on over.
Everybody go to the Middle East.
Come on over.
But I remember the first time I came back from Korea on break, and I think it was a couple months I was going to be in the US, and my first plane had to land in Japan, which I had already been to Japan, and everything was cool, copacetic. I mean, literally, I got to the airport, everything went smoothly. I got to Chicago, and I hadn't been home in almost 2 years. And I got to Chicago, got off the plane, and you have to go pick up your bags, then go to the other part of the airport, then put your bags back and go through the whole thing. And I had the same amount of bags I left Korea in. And I remember, let me check, I gotta get my words right. I remember this young lady who, she was African American, Black lady. She was like, where you going? I'm hot. It's been almost 24 hours. I've been on this plane ride. What are you talking about? I'm going to my next plane. And she was like, pulled me out the line. Everything was funky. She had an attitude. And I wasn't accustomed to that because I had been gone for a while by that time. And I was just shocked. It was culture shock. And I literally had to get out of the line, stuff bags, because she was like, you got too many bags, you can't go, you don't have to pay this, yada, yada, yada. And she was just the rudest. And I was like, well, welcome home, because the experience was so sucky. And I was like, literally, and it just changed my whole demeanor because I think it was like my birthday time or something. And I was just super excited that I'm coming home for the first time. And it was not welcoming at all, like at all. And so that lends to a lot, because when you're abroad and you're living this life and you have so much more freedom and a lot of flexibility, it is jarring to step off the plane where you're coming home and not feel like this is home at all. And I know that even coming back and having to repatriate, which nobody talks about, which can lead to depression and a whole lot of things because you're not aware of all the stuff that you're going to go through. So I want to talk to Michelle, because I too am an expat coach and an intercultural coach. And a lot of people don't understand that, like, when you move from one country to the next country, the expectations are different. It takes some cultural adjustment to get in the swing of things while you're moving. But then also, as a person of color who may have experienced a certain lifestyle in their country of origin, and then they go to another country, like, tell me your experience, because we haven't got to talk to you about your experience living abroad. And do you feel accepted? How do you have conversations with some of your clients about the adjustments, either coming or going?
I think because I went from Africa to the States, I was there for almost 15 years. And then, so I think I assimilated to a point, but because I did not grow up there, so some of it was, even when I got to America, it was like, whoa, what is this? Because I started experiencing, I think,
What happened to my sound?
my parents have been telling me stories about how they were getting calls from the university saying, hey, tell your daughter to come back. I was like, what? Because I went on scholarship. Because they would like, don't you want to go home? I was like, what are you talking about? You know, I'm doing okay. I'm fine. I'm adjusting. And then so it was like, why were they trying to get me to go home? So I was like, no, I'm not going home. And then so I went from having gone to a private school. Now I have to work 2 jobs to, so that was different. Because and so when I talk about that experience I had in America, having had to work 3 jobs, I put myself through my master's in education. And when I tell people that, they're like, what? I was like, yeah, that's normal. So because because now it's normal for the US, but it's, so when you're talking
to the US, right,
about it, and you're like, yeah, I worked as a maid. They're like, what? You worked as a what? I was like, you know what? You do what you gotta do to get you where you want to go. And then, so for me, when I go home, when I go to Zimbabwe, it's so difficult. I haven't been there for 27 years. Even just adjusting to the internet, the transportation, it takes me like 2 weeks. Then you gotta remember, okay, it's not like where you are. You can be on that. They got 2 gigs is like, I don't know how much it is now. It's, you cannot use even the internet. You cannot do what to do where you cannot do that. So it's like, so for me, every time I go home every summer, normally I would be having a nice cold winter. It's you get that reverse culture shock, and then having not been in that having not lived there for so long, it's you feel like an alien. And then it's I can't say I understand how the reverse culture shock is really jarring, because
It is.
because I think you've been to Dubai, even some places here, like you can, midnight, I can walk around. Oh no, I go to Africa, forget it. You better be home before it's dark. You can get in a car, you can get in an Uber or Careem, and it's relatively safe. No, if you want to take a taxi, you better be a taxi driver, and you gotta tell them you need to hurry up because it's not safe. So I can also I can't imagine, but I can how, because I think like right now everybody's like they want to go home. Like you might have been indoors for so long. I just want to go home. I want to see my family. But you're gonna go there, and you be like, "Mom, yay, I'm home for like maybe 2 weeks," and then it's like, "Oh, I cannot do what I normally do. I cannot do what is now normal for me." It's because it's so different. And as Dash was saying, even people can tell that you don't live there just by the way you dress, just the way you are. And my dad.
Then you can become a target.
Yeah, I got robbed. 2 years ago, they came and took my handbags, computer, everything.
Wow.
I was like,
I'm so sorry
and I think they had studied me, but it's like, okay, so it's like you like here, you kind of like have that, you're not so conscious. I mean, you still have to be aware of your surroundings, but it's like, if I remember one time I forgot my keys to the apartment. So I go back, and I think I'd been to like 4 different stores, and then I just said no. It might have been in the first store. The guy's like, he's like, I tried calling you, but it's like when someone yells at you, I do not respond. So it was like, if I'd been anywhere else, you wouldn't have found it. You forget things like putting your wallet on, when you're paying. You do that, but when you go somewhere else, you don't do that. You become, I think you become aware, very self-aware that I'm holding stuff to myself, and it's really scary. Like when I have gone to Johannesburg, because I think there you stick out like a sore thumb, and I could not remember that. I did not believe that I had done this. I got in a car, and I was talking about I needed to do something, and then the guy, instead of taking me where I wanted to go, it was an Uber or something. He's like, I want to go pick up my wife. And I was like, you mind? I just said yes. And I was thinking about it. It was like, what if it had not been his wife? What if I had put myself in danger? Who would I go to? That was not very wise. So it's you. I think when you go home, you have that reverse culture shock, and then like when I moved, I was in Sudan for 1 year, and I had just come back from the States, so I still had that American mentality. I want stuff done. I want this. I want that, and like, okay, it's like, okay, hey, can you remember that you're back in Africa and you got to have a different mindset? So it took me like a couple of months to, okay, I can't do that. I cannot do that because I was, so it's like, even when I do go home and then my brother's like, do you talk to people like that? He's like, man, you're rude. I was like, oh, okay. So it's like, it's, I think, you know, I now have to be conscious of where I am so that I don't act the way I would if I was in a certain place. Because as an African child, I have to have some certain mannerisms, and sometimes you just have to because I'm home or I'm somewhere and it's like, I feel like rolling my eyes, but it's like, I can't do that.
Well, with that being said, not to cut you off, but you're in Saudi Arabia right now. Like, what is your experience as a person of color in Saudi Arabia, even though they are still people of color? Like that, and I know this to be true. For the African American experience can be very different from the African experience, and the African experience can be very different from, you know, an Indian person's experience. No, and we all experience racism in very different ways. What's your experience there in Saudi Arabia at this time?
It's been pretty positive, but I think because I decided to be open and be respectful, because my philosophy, as having lived in many countries, is I'm going to be, this is not my country, so I'm going to be respectful. I sometimes wear the full hijab, the black, and cover my face. I didn't have to, but I felt it better to fit in than to stick out, and it does wonders for your skin. And the instances where people have made comments, I've learned how to speak Arabic. I can understand. I'm not very fluent. I just let it go because it's not worth the energy. It might be you get in a taxi, the driver will tell you he'll tell you one fare, and then he drives you to where you're going. Then it's a surprise because, okay, you're this black person, he's expecting a different place, and there you are going to a nice place, and he was like, I'll charge you this much. And like, okay, I just let it go because I don't feel it's worth that.
You a good one. You good.
It's not worthwhile expanding the energy. I just can't.
The quoted price is what you get. Never.
I mean, because it's like, you know, you be tired, you've been shopping, you know how it is. You go to the mall, you've been shopping, you got the bag, you just want to go to bed, and you're like, okay, fine, here, whatever. And it's not even worth it because I just look at it that way. Maybe because especially now, like, you know, with the Ubers and you got into a taxi, maybe that's all he's made the whole day. I just look at it, okay, maybe he needs some money, and I'll let it go because sometimes it's not worth expanding the energy.
Sometimes that's your blessing. That's your blessing. You're supposed to bless that person with that extra few little reals. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been like, or you may be in the supermarket, someone else, they'll let some people. I think it was just before prayer time, and but they were employees of the supermarket. And I said, "Excuse me." He's like, okay. But it's like, it's been more, it's just some things that I don't feel that it's worthwhile expanding energy on. One of the comments I get all the time is, you're not a native speaker, but English is my first language, and I hold a Zimbabwean passport, but that's just that. But I choose not to fight that battle. I don't think it's worth it because I'm not going to win it anyway. So I'd rather conserve my energy for things that matter. I mean, I
feel
mean,
you.
it's an experience, but it's not going to change who I am. It's not going to change what I am, and it's not going to take away from the skills I have, or I just think you just have to choose your battles. But I think it depends where you are, because I remember I was in Tokyo and I wanted to get my nails done. The place was empty. They said we don't have an appointment. And I just looked at my friend. I was like, "Are they serious?" She's like, "I said no, it's okay. Let's go." And I mean, so it's when I was in Korea, people were staring a lot, but I was still a
Oh,
career
do
boo.
they
I was
stare?
still a career boo. I was still a career boo. I was still, oh my gosh, I'm in Korea. But now it's like I have a deeper understanding of why they were staring, and so I think for me it depends where it is, and then how much energy I want to expand, and is it worth it?
And
But I think
that's actually a good point because um oftentimes, when you're abroad, it's that thin line. I remember I had this experience on the subway in Korea, and this guy, like, there was so much room, he could have sat anywhere, and I had my foot up, like, not on anything, but like my legs were crossed, and he came over and he hit my leg. And like everything in me just wanted to punch him, and he was an older man, and so like all the things in the scenario started going through my head, like, okay, you about to go to jail if you hit this dude. Like everything is just about to go bad. You're gonna be in some kind of detention camp. And I like literally was pissed off, and like I didn't know the words to say. I didn't know how to like respond in the correct way, and like I literally almost, like, I was 2 seconds from like really punching him in his face. But he said some stuff in Korean. I kind of took it like, it could be this, but then I wanted to try to maintain like the dignity that I had left and not go to jail. And so that can be an experience. However, with all this going on in the US, all the systemic racism, all the overt racism, like life abroad for me was easy. Like you had instances where things, weren't always copacetic, but it's like living in the South. You kind of know that there's some expectation that maybe things, you're going to get certain things, but on the up and up, I really knew that I was safe. Like, as you all are living abroad, I know that I got these questions, like, especially from Americans who think that America is the greatest, that, why do you want to live abroad? Like, your life is so much, but this is the land of milk and honey, and yada, yada, yada. And we have so much technology in it. And I had to explain to them, I lived in Korea and my technology was like 10, 15 years ahead of the game. So like,
Right.
why do you think that this is all that you have? Like, you've been sold this bill of sales and the goods are no good. So I need people to understand that there are so many more experiences that they can have if they live abroad, if they see different places. I've been to 22 different countries, and had I not like sat and had a conversation, and Heather was like, let's go to Japan, and I was like open to it, then I never would have seen these things. I would have been sitting in, I had been in 48 states, but at the same time, those experiences are totally different than getting off a plane in a foreign country where you just are open to so much. So and then we have a little time, and I want to bring on questions. I know people are asking or saying things on Facebook, but then we have people here. If you have questions, go ahead and either put them in the chat or raise your hand so I can see and I can call you to come into the conversation. Angela, we can see you. So if you got a question, just jump in. But talk about that experience and how you have to really get people who haven't seen anything, haven't been anywhere. You know, most people haven't been what I call that, 20 square blocks. And that's their norm or their nucleus, and that they haven't been anywhere other to experience anything other than what they've experienced. Sometimes they've gone to another state, but literally their whole world is that 20 blocks. Talk about those conversations and what life can be different, how life can be different abroad.
I want to jump on that because this is something that I encounter pretty often, just being a tour operator, just in acquiring clients who may be just interested in visiting. We're not even talking about living. We're talking about a 5-day trip, and they're scared. One of my clients, and I have to do a lot of hand-holding and explaining to folks who, like you mentioned, have never left their 20 city blocks. One of my clients, her first trip abroad was to Cuba, and I called her a couple times because she had this idea in her head that she was going to get kidnapped, that she was going to be in danger, that her safety was threatened. And by and large, people say that they feel safer in Cuba. And the thing is that there is that layer or multiple layers of protection being a foreigner. Because if you do get into any type of altercation or any trouble, you know that, rest assured that the local, in many instances, I don't want to say always, but in many instances, the local is the one that's gonna get the repercussions, because you can hop on a plane and you're out of there. And I don't say always, because again, you're still a Black person. And so like with your exchange, Cha, you still knew. You're like, no, I'm not trying to go to jail. Like, you still have those mechanisms in mind.
Right.
Yeah. And it's these lived experiences and life experiences, and how we were saying that as people from the US. So I have a thing about the word America. America is the continent. I'm Central American, South American. So I generally say US. So that's my thing. And a lot of Latin Americans' thing is that the United States isn't America, it's the United States. And so what we were talking about, how Black people have, or rather people from the US have an air about them, an air of confidence. My husband noticed that. He's like, he understands, he observes people, he observes our clients, he observes me, we've been together over 5 years. And he's like, I understand that Black people, they have to assert themselves because they're always under attack by white people. Whereas in Cuba, for example, in his community, he doesn't really have to engage with white people if he doesn't want to. He does have some white neighbors, but I offer that Cuba has been Africanized in so many ways that they don't even notice. And a lot of his neighbors just kind of, specifically in his neighborhood, which is predominantly Black Cuban, they have conformed to the community. And it's not to say that they're not racist, because, I don't want to make it to be like that. But that community was predominantly white at one point. There's a school that his niece used to go to. It used to be a whites only social club. And after the revolution, they did away with race-based social clubs. But, all of that to say is that it's very layered, it's very nuanced, it's very complicated in some instances. And in other instances, it's not, And so just visiting people have an idea that they're gonna be kidnapped, raped, killed. I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm like, you can be all of those things right on your block,
Right.
And the
but
police
that's what the media feeds people. That's the brainwashing. That's the programming. Yeah, I'm getting into it, child. I'm sorry. But that's what the media does. They don't want you to go anywhere to see that there's actually something comparable or better than what you're receiving where you are. As long as you are dependent on the US, then you're good. As soon as you get that taste, as soon as you get that flavor of no anxiety, no stress, PTSD, no looking over your shoulder, no police are about to pull you out the car and cuff you with your face to the ground. We don't have that. We don't have, and I can't even express it. Words don't do it justice.
Yeah.
Words don't do it justice. And for anyone who is experiencing this level of stress, I implore you, hit me up. Hit me up. We got plenty of folks with extra bedrooms, Airbnb, and all that other good stuff. Oh, taste and see what this world has to offer if and when they ever open these borders.
Yeah, I have a spare room. I live in, going to what you're saying, I have a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and I live in a security high rise, and I pay $800. $800 can't get
Mashallah,
you a
mashallah.
in New York. Please, you know $800, they're looking at you like, what?
Right.
You want
to pay $800 in over 20 years. Like, other than I live free in Korea. Like,
yeah.
that's like the
ask
best
me, people ask me, oh, when are you moving back? I'm like, I've been out of the US for the past almost 10 years. And I have anxiety thinking like I'm like for real, because I'm working on my husband's green card application. And imagine we've been together 5 years and we didn't even look to do that until now. And it's really just so that he has access to travel, because the Cuban passport allows him to go nowhere, like really. And so again, that's but I have
that's a whole nother panel. Love abroad. That's a whole nother panel. Living and loving abroad. Lord, today. Okay.
But I had to have a talk with him the other day. I'm like, have you been seeing the protests and all of that? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you know, let's talk serious here. You don't speak English. He doesn't speak any English. I'm like, if we move to the States, what does that mean for your safety that you don't speak English? And he's a big Black guy. He's not mixed. You know what I'm saying? Because people always want to paint that picture Latin Americans are so mixed. No, he's darker than me. He's towering. He's very, you know, he's tall. He has a very booming voice. 5 gold chains. You know, he looks like
he'll definitely be a target.
Hello?
He is him, honey.
Imagine him engaging with cops and they're speaking to him in English. They're not going to think he's an immigrant or that he's English second language, because he doesn't fit that profile. And so I'm like, you really need to get on this, because I'm not going to be accompanying you anywhere, you know? And just the idea of moving to the States unnerves me. Just me, you know, just me being there like full time, it's unnerving. And like Heather said, it's a level of stress, you know, multiple layers of stress, like just little things. Like, for example, we don't get mail in Panama. And even not getting mail here, like
we don't get mail like that either.
Something as simple as that, you know? So it's these things like, for example, I said I pay $800 in rent. It's a lifestyle that I can have here that I could never dream of having.
That's another thing.
Where I want to live, because you can maybe have in Arkansas, but ain't nobody moving there.
Mississippi. Yeah, I mean, but that's real. Like that mail, like I was so happy living in Korea and never get mail, because I felt free. I was like, you know, bills aren't showing up. I don't owe nobody nothing. Like my check is mine. I get a text message
to pay my bills. I get a text and I press a button and I pay my bills.
I don't get that. My first contract,
I gotta go pick it up.
My first contract, they literally, like, once you got your money, they had already paid your internet, they had already paid the water bill, whatever. So your check was like, that's cash. Like, I don't owe nobody. I'm free. I'm like doing me. I don't have to really, you know, think about anything. So like literally I could just get on the plane and go wherever I wanted to go and go do the things I wanted to do. And it was the most freeing experience in my life, not having to assess bills and be like, okay, I can pay this and I can live off of this. And and even though I made way less than I would have made in the US,
quality of life.
The quality of life and my flexibility and my experiences were mine to own and do what the fuck I wanted to do with them. So that in and of itself was everything.
A friend of mine in the military who was stationed there called Korea being on the yard with money.
Yeah, you just have this level of freedom.
Some of y'all understand. Some of y'all old enough to understand what being on the yard is. Think about it. Being on the yard with money.
HBCU, if you had the money, like when I had a car
With
and
money.
I never ate in a
Right.
calf, like
Oh,
never, never
That's
ate in a
all
calf.
the difference. With money is all the difference. That's a game changer.
Right, and
really
I
Right.
think, but I also want to let's have a, and you know we're a little bit over time, so I want to be respectful of time, and I want to be respectful of questions. And Angela, you can jump in whenever and
I'm
just get in the
sorry.
conversation.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
mute.
but I really want to help people understand that there are many different ways. Like when I'm coaching somebody to go live abroad or who has the expat contract and they're taking the next steps, you know, it's way more. There's being a self-initiated expat. That means that person just packed their bags and went and they on their own. They're doing their own thing. There's no contract involved. Or it could be a contract, but like if you're an English teacher, you can still be considered a self-initiated expat because the you don't have a level of coverage in that, and that's another part of the conversation. Or you can be going as an expat with a corporation, and that's what they tend to deem as the expat, the person who is either going with the foreign service or the military or DoD, and they have like everything covered, and they're just moving kind of, they have security in the sense that they live in certain areas, they don't have to worry about certain things. As a self-initiated expat, you still have to worry about certain things, you still have to move in a certain way, and so you don't have all the luxuries. So talk to me or talk to us about experiences that will help you get abroad, because there's so many people who think I can't do this, or it's going to take an act of God and I got to have this, that, or other. I will say this, that going abroad, unless you're going to be like a nomad and be off the grids, you do need education, and that is extremely important. That's why I tell young people, get your papers. That's your passport. You need your passport, and then you need that second passport that gives you the moving rights to be able to do what you want to do. But talk a little bit about that. And Angela, if you want to jump in, you can jump in the conversation too.
Thank you.
Hey, Angela.
Hi, thank you
Hi,
so
Angela.
much. I just feel so privileged that you invited me, that you put this together on your own. I think I wrote in the chat that I started 30 years ago, before all of this kind of technology. And we had 3 young kids, and now they're all expats. One's at the International School in Bangkok on the faculty. One's an engineer for General Electric in England. One's a lawyer in Germany. Yeah, I have two boys. The oldest is 40, the middle one is 37, and my daughter is 33. She's the lawyer with patent
That's
law,
fantastic.
PhD from MIT. She's the only one that went to the US to get any degree at all. The kids, my oldest got his university degree in Brussels, his first one, and then a master's in England. And then the middle one got a first degree at University of Bristol. He got his MBA in Switzerland. Our daughter did her first degree at King's College London, and then did her PhD at MIT and a law degree at Columbia. But yes, we raised them as expats, but we were corporate expats. And for us, it was in China, and it was wonderful because, talking about off the grid, they didn't have this kind of internet option, this social media. So I could curate the kind of world that I wanted them to live in. See, we had lived in Long Island, believe it or not. We went to a village that was, in terms of population size, number 39 amongst 42 villages, but it was number 1 in terms of library book circulation.
Wow.
So imagine, when we bought the house, we thought that would be forever. But between 1980, when we bought the house, and 1989, when we left, the world changed, and the wall came down, and we realized that people would be very individualistic and very lifestyle oriented. Money, people who came from the Eastern Bloc had never had lifestyle. So now they were going to do that. And I realized that that was going to happen. And I didn't want my kids, I wanted them to still have a chance to live in that world that I was raised in, where education was wealth. Education was wealth. There was a time once that was the case. So the very first week that we put our kids at the international school in Taipei, my husband's, the wife of my husband's boss, I was going to go to the school because it was a little guidance counselor activity called homework. And so this woman says to me, Angela, when husbands make as much money as ours, we don't have to go to those kind of things at school. Ooh. And that made me, of course, go. And that, and that changed the way of my life, because I realized the only ones that wanted homework were the Americans, because they didn't want a parent. They really wanted surrogates. They thought they had enough money so they could have a basketball coach, a tennis coach, a piano teacher, a ballet, anybody but them. So they wanted homework because they didn't want to parent. The Germans and the Japanese were saying, look, our kids come to you at 8 o'clock in the morning and they leave at 3 in the afternoon. Do you think we don't have a life in German? In Japanese? Why should we have English? You don't want your homework. We have a life. And that's when I realized I would always join the American women's groups. I would just pay dues because it's money. And I would belong to Japanese women and the European women's groups. And that changed that allowed me to curate a life. So, I mean, we went for 4 years in the late 90s to the States. But the kids immediately went to Europe. When they finished, they did their IB. The boys did IB, International Baccalaureate diplomas, and my daughter was in the French lycée. Because believe it or not, when I went abroad in China, there was one Black woman. She was the wife of the ambassador from Haiti to Taiwan, and I asked her, "Who's the Josephine Baker of China?" And she said, "There isn't one. You'll have to be her." So,
wow.
And so that's how, for you have now so much more access, but you have more challenges because you can't control, you can't curate. Your kids can have a cell phone and anybody can talk to them. There was no cell phone when my kids were growing up. So I really controlled. I bought audio books so they would hear English, even though they were speaking French and Dutch and German. I bought English audio books. So we would be driving in the car and listening to American, or British English writers. I bought a whole bunch of DVDs from the BBC or from the US, trying to curate the kind of America and native life that so they knew that there were places where English was the predominant language. And
you need to write a how-to book. You need to write how to raise your kids abroad to be absolutely magnificent. You need to write a book, Mrs. Shaw. I'd buy it. I'd buy the book.
I'm just so happy that I could see you. I can see you and see how, you are who I was. But so it's purely a joy to see you doing this with so much inspiration, and I love it. And you're such good sport for each other.
You paved the way for us. You and your family paved the way for us. So we thank you.
I wish I can't say it. You're like the Josephine Bakers now. You have to do it.
Yes, we are the Josephine Bakers. That's amazing.
And I'm so amazed by all the stories of expats, because even when I went to Korea in 2008, 2009, technology has changed so much. We were just getting into Facebook at that time, and so social media changed a lot. But the experience before, you just had to find the expat community, and you had to get in there and have conversations and go to brunches and things like that. So I really want to be able to continue this conversation. I have another meeting to go to, but more importantly, this has been so transformative. It didn't go like I intended it, in the sense that I wanted to talk a little bit more about, you know, why we can't breathe in America, and how
We can do
we're
a
able
part
to
two.
breathe.
Do a part two, y'all. Part
We
two.
are. I was
We can
going
do
to invite you all to, let's have this conversation, continue the conversation in a couple weeks. Next week, I'll be talking about the 2020 graduates and how their experiences have changed. But more importantly, I want to continue this conversation online. I had 2 groups going, so it was a lot of questions, a lot of comments. So we'll be able to take a little of that and have a broader conversation about the many different experiences, because there's ways to study abroad if you're trying to get abroad initially. There's ways to go and be a pair, or, you know, a nanny. There's, you know, ways. There's so many different ways to get abroad, and I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about the different experiences. And I really appreciate all of you being able to lend the conversation. I know we didn't get into the meat of things, so we will do that on a continued conversation. Until then, I want all of you to be safe, be positive, and do something to uplift us and keep us moving in the right direction. Yeah, and thank you so much for even being a part of the conversation, and all of you online, all of you here on the Zoom. Pump your questions, have more conversation. If you aren't a member of Expat Women of Color, please become a member of Expat Women of Color. Continue the conversation there. There's also a group called Ladies and Lunch, which I'm broadcasting there as well. But thank you all for this opportunity and continuing the conversation. And remember, we can't allow them to take our breath. So keep breathing, keep speaking, keep fighting, and keep moving forward.
Yes.
Love y'all. And until next time, be safe.
Power to the people. Bye. Thanks for having us. Have a great night, day.
Yeah, good night to some.
Good night.